In my video about having a bucket list, we were discussing different things that we might want to do, and Sherry brought up fly fishing, which is something I've done before. But an interesting thing that came up in discussion is I'm scared of water. It is interesting because I grew up on the lake. I actually grew up water skiing every weekend from April to November until I was an adult. I started skiing when I was, I think, 5 years old, started on Solemn when I was 7. I even skied in a couple of competitions. But even then, I was afraid of the water. You can imagine water skiing and being afraid of the water. I tried everything. I tried skiing off the dock, which the dock didn't like. I tried skiing off the beach. I tried skiing off the back of a houseboat. I even, at one point, I squatted on the side of the boat with my slalom in one hand and the end of the rope in the other, and I just said, go! And I would just jump off the boat and put my ski on mid-air, and then of course when the slack came out of the rope, it would jerk the heck out of me, but I didn't have to get in the water. The problem came when I fell or when he was done and would slow the boat down and I would sink, and it was the worst feeling in the world. Interestingly, I'm not afraid of swimming. I'm not afraid of drowning. I'm not even afraid of deep water. I'm afraid of shallow water, which I know is a silly thing. But let me just back up and explain. It started when I was really young. You know, my grandfather used to tell me these stories of fishing at the dam, and he said that there were catfish in there as big as Volkswagens. And of course I believed him. And then some years later, there were a group of us that skied on Center Hill Lake, and one of the kids got scuba gear for Christmas. So he would dive down and he would come back with these horrible stories about what was down there, like turtles this big and everything that was on the bottom of the lake. And of course there were the floods, you know, when the water would rise and then when it would go back down, there would be all these huge dead carp and gar and all this other Tennessee lake life. It was really bad. But I think what got me the most was the movies. Jaws, Evil Dead, Living Dead, all those horror movies that we watched. They always took place at cabins on the lake, of course. Anyway, so yeah, I'm more afraid of shallow water. I remember one time when my dad skied me up in a cove, which was my worst fear. I'm claustrophobic anyway, so skiing into a cove is really kind of like, I love skiing out in the open, but he skied me up into a cove, and unfortunately he got bogged down because it was more shallow than he thought it was going to be. So here I sink, and I'm in like 2 foot of water, and I hit the bottom, and I look down and I can see the bottom, and I completely freaked out. I swam literally on top of the water, never touched the bottom. I swam on top of the water all the way back to the boat. I get in the boat, and I'm like, whew. And then I look back, and my dad looks at me, and he's like, you left your ski out there. Yeah, I had to go back. So fly fishing was kind of adventurous for me. It was one of those face your fear things because you actually get in the water to go fly fishing versus bait fishing, which is all I had ever done. So it was maybe 10 years ago, I think, when I went on my first fly fishing trip. We went to Normandy Dam, which is a gorgeous place here in Tennessee. So I had to wade out in the water thigh deep with my feet touching the bottom. As you can imagine, I'm like petrified, and so I'm getting this adrenaline rush, and the water is really cold and the sun is really hot, and of course I catch a tree. Such as fly fishing on your first trip out. But it was an exhilarating experience simply because I was really facing my fear. And nothing bit me, so it's all good. Speaking of getting bit by fish though, I recently went to the Tennessee Aquarium in Chattanooga with my daughter, and there were these really great displays. We were in the freshwater section, and there were alligators, and there was a big sign there, and it said, do not lift your children up to the top of the alligator tank. And I'm like, well, duh. And then we get to the next display, and it's got a really tall glass thing, so we're just looking through the glass. And then we get to the next display, and it's a really short glass thing. Like the water is right here, you can reach over, and the people in front of us were reaching over and they were touching the fish. And so I said to my daughter, I'm like, reach in there and touch them, it's cool. She's like, you're not supposed to. I said, they did, and it's a short glass and there's no sign here. So she wouldn't do it, so I set out to prove to her that the fish wouldn't bite, it was harmless. So I reached my hand in and I pet one of the fish, and it was so cool, and of course they all ran away, and I'm like, see, it's totally cool. So she starts to do it, she's like, I'm scared. And I'm like, come on, I'll show you again. So I stick my hand in there again, and the thing bit me. I mean, they had teeth. I don't know if they were trout or what they were. They were some kind of freshwater fish, but they were like about this big. And the thing literally grabbed a hold of my finger and had teeth, and I was freaking out. I was like dancing all over the aquarium. I was like screaming. And she laughed. I said they should put a sign on this tank too. Anyway, so it's not actually the water I'm afraid of, it's the stuff in the water. And man, there's a lot of stuff in there. Especially once you go through the Tennessee Aquarium or any real aquarium. But the Tennessee Aquarium is great because it shows all the local rivers here in Tennessee and what lives in them. Scary stuff. And the ocean, oh my gosh, the ocean's full of it. We don't even know what all's in that place. I'm really cautious about that, so you won't catch me wading out very far in the ocean. But when I went to Fort Myers Beach, which was my second trip to the Gulf, and I absolutely love the Gulf beaches. When I went to Fort Myers Beach, the tide would roll in, and it was cool, and then when the tide rolled back out, it left all this stuff on the beach that was still alive. Live starfish, live sand dollars, live conch shells, everything, and it was still alive, and the birds would come down and feed on it. We walked the beach, and we checked it out, and we picked up shells that were not still alive. We accidentally picked up a few that were. And it was the coolest thing ever. But I don't want to necessarily wade out there with that stuff. Certainly don't want to swim with it. So yeah, I'm afraid of the stuff in the water.